The Western world is changing, profoundly and rapidly. As we've lost our conception of God, that recognition of some higher governing power from which all creation springs, the divine and lofty ideal that has been fuel to the fire of human greatness for generations, money, naturally, slithered in to fill the void. And as it became the new driving force of individuals and nations, all organs of influence and control naturally fell under its sway. The obscenely wealthy on both sides of the political spectrum began to use their purchased major media platforms to push the idea of mass immigration and the destruction of borders as a means of ensuring an endless supply of dirt-cheap, exploitable labor. It's difficult to imagine something more sick than the hijacking of a nation's noble and altruistic instincts to serve negative ends. But ambitious profiteers tend to care for little but their bottom line, and their unrestrained greed must wear a mask of virtue in the process. Instead of finding means to support these individuals in struggling or war-torn regions, to feed, clothe, house, and create lasting solutions for them in the places they've always called home, a deeply corrupt press began to craft the narrative that the only way to help these individuals was to import them in massive numbers to live next door to us, even in some cases in our own homes alongside our children. In our blind, albeit well-intentioned altruism, we threw open the doors and watched as well-funded organizations began shipping in migrants and refugees by the millions in both Europe and America. The results have been catastrophic. Skyrocketing crime, especially rape and sexual assault, with large sections of certain nations now essentially off limits, especially to young women. An explosion in gang violence, a massive strain on the social welfare systems, and profound economic costs in general. A lowering of school standards, and thus a decreased pace and efficiency of education. And a sense of relation and common cause with one's neighbor, replaced with a restless confusion. For the first time in modern history, life expectancy is falling. Suicide rates and drug overdose deaths soar. And once beautiful cities are now littered with urine, feces, used needles, and broken people.
Amanda.
Yes.
You're homeless here in Seattle.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Seattle's beautiful. What do you want to know?
Is this video then something of a last message to the West? An epitaph, even? A recognition that we've squandered our brilliant inheritance? That the world our ancestors so painstakingly built up over the millennia has been casually discarded and left to be picked apart and sold for scrap? Perhaps. But something encouraging is beginning to happen. The conditioning is beginning to break. Vital questions are beginning to be asked. What if that noble altruistic nature that causes us to seek to help the world would soon be rendered moot if we became unable to even set our own house in order? What if diversity wasn't a nation's strength? What if it wasn't the friction and tension and the pulling in opposite directions that made nations stronger, but rather the sense of family, of community, of social cohesion and resonance, that ability to relate to and feel a real bond and kinship with one's fellow citizen? What if every people, both Western and non-Western, deserved to experience this, and that entirely modern practice of shuffling human beings between nations as if pieces on a game board was both unnatural and psychologically destructive? And what if it's the case that any nation trying to represent everything at once ultimately ends up representing nothing at all? What if this attempt to tie together the concept of love for one's ancestors, culture, and way of life with the concept of racial hatred and genocide was an insidious and baseless lie? What if all people deserve to feel the right to love and respect their roots? And what if we chose to simply ignore those hateful voices demanding we teach our children to feel a paralyzing guilt, and instead chose to be positive and life-affirming? What if, as individuals, instead of taking the easy path and virtue signaling in exchange for social or career advancement, we instead chose to be selfless, self-sacrificing, and prize the future of our children over our own personal benefit? What if we admired the diversity of peoples and cultures in this world to the extent that we took steps to preserve it, as opposed to ushering in a one-world shopping mall with consumption as our new religion, and the masters of money as our new gods, in which we all look, speak, and think the same, as all exceptional human variety is indiscriminately mixed into oblivion? What if the greatest works of art, innovation, lofty creation, inspired genius weren't produced by men merely seeking to make a buck, but required much sturdier and deeper foundations that can only be provided by high culture? What if these new power brokers have us on the cusp of losing, for eternity, not only our traditions and customs and culture, but our very people? There's still time to right this ship. In a world indoctrinated to scapegoat and despise us, it'd be foolish to claim we don't have a very difficult path ahead. Yet we also have an unparalleled history of rising to seemingly impossible challenges. We need only the will and the courage to navigate our way back to sanity. So as to whether this is a last message to the West or a first message to the West, we need only answer this simple question: is there something here worth saving?